House Concurrent Resolution 17, Brian. It passed the House, and it made its way over into the committee in the Senate. And this deals with addressing just the political violence. Let's listen to Senator Taves here present the bill.
And before you today is House Concurrent Resolution 17. It's a resolution standing up against political violence and intimidation. The unfortunate reality is that this legislation is actually important because it details timeless truths that are relevant due to recent situations in Idaho. We've had a few situations up north, and so I'm just going to read a few lines of this, and but I'm not going to keep you too long because I know we're at the end of a long committee. So whereas the foundation of a free and civil society is the ability to engage in open and respectful discourse without fear of violence or retribution. And whereas recent events in North Idaho have involved acts of violence and intimidation, including the disruption of a public meeting by pulling a fire alarm, an assault on a trustee, the arson of a legislator's place of business, threats to burn down a legislator's residence, and threats to murder a legislator. And whereas these acts of violence and intimidation are unacceptable in a constitutional republic and have no place in the political process of the state of Idaho, and whereas political disagreements must be resolved through debate, due process, and democratic means, rather than through threats, destruction, or harm to individuals or property.
Yeah, very good. Brian, you know, I think this is great because we always hear this kind of thing, this kind of rhetoric coming from the left about how violent things are against Democrats or against a protected class, you know. And here we have some footage here. Here we're talking about actual incidences that don't get national coverage. They don't even get statewide coverage for the most part. And if they do, they're spun differently. But we just saw Representative Cornell Razor speak up. He owned an Army surplus store up in Sandpoint, and here it is the day. I think this was this the day after 4th of July or somewhere?
It was 4th of July. It was that evening because there were fireworks going off, and they originally thought it was a stray firework, but no.
That's right. Yeah, they originally thought it was a stray firework, but it was actually arson. Somebody actually set that place on fire. Maybe they used a firework or something along those lines, some sort of explosive incendiary device. But he lost a beloved spot. I mean, this was an Army surplus store. It's been an anchor in the community for a long time, and this was his entire business. I mean, this is what he does for a living. He owns this small business, and now he's a legislator. So, I mean, this is salt of the earth guys, people, you know, that own small businesses, and this happened to his business, and he was targeted by a lunatic on the left, you know.
According to the court, yes.
Yeah, according to the court, that's right. Yeah, and then you have stuff like, you know, you always hear like, oh, free speech doesn't cover yelling fire in a crowded theater, right? And what that really means is like you're not supposed to cause a panic. Right. You know, you can say fire if there really is a fire, but what you also can't do is pull a fire alarm when there isn't an actual fire. And watch this. Here's a compilation. Yeah, this was happening at the North Idaho College Board of Trustees meeting. There were some contentious things going on, and somebody pulled a fire alarm. And everybody rushed outside and they had to get through because there was the fire department showed up and everything. And this is causing a panic. And luckily nobody got hurt. Nothing happened. Oh, look who it is. Look who it is. The alleged fire alarm puller herself is a leftist. And then do we have any more footage, guys? Anything else? Is that all we have from footage wise?
Remind me, was anyone held responsible or accountable for pulling that fire alarm?
Well, that person there that you saw was brought in for questioning. They said they had footage in the building of the hallway where that fire alarm was, and she was the only person to have passed by that fire alarm. But there were no charges brought against her, and charges were dropped, and there are no other suspects. So. Such is life in Coeur d'Alene with the Coeur d'Alene PD.
You hear about political violence, and if you listen to, say, mainstream news, that you think it's all coming from the right. You think it's all white supremacy and racism and, you know, sexism and anti-trans and all these bigots out there are committing violence, but you actually look at the numbers and it's hardly anything at all. Meanwhile, we have angry leftists setting Teslas on fire nationwide as we speak, with the tacit approval of leftist politicians. We remember the Summer of Love in 2020, where, according to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, riots are just the language of the unheard. And, Kamala Harris was soliciting money to bail these people out so they could get back on the streets and keep up their riots. Political violence in America, at least right now, really only goes one way. And yet you'll still see leftist politicians say that, that's just free speech, whereas speech on our side, that's committing violence. You're making minorities and transgender people feel unsafe by your speech. So they've had this double standard. So resolutions are just statements, but it's good to see such a statement going through the process.
Yeah, it's good to see that our side's taking it seriously and pushing back and saying, let's get this through. So it passed the House. We'll see what happens in the Senate.